Hello! In this tutorial I'll teach how to create a page with a matrix where you can assign projects to your employees and edit the details in the pop-up. So let's log in our framework, choose one of the workspaces, disable these tools so we can select the default project, and let's create a new page called matrix. So now that we have the page editor open, let's drag and drop the matrix widgets into one of our template regions. So the focus of this tutorial is to teach you how to work with this widget here, the matrix widgets, and to configure it so we can have the list of employees in the axis Y in here, a list of projects in the axis X in here, and then in the middle we're gonna have a switch button to enable or disable the project for each employees, and then a button to open a pop-up to edit the details. So now what we want to do next is to create the default tables in our database so we can have that specific matrix pulling that specific data from the database. So we're gonna need an employee table so we can have the list of employees. We'll need to have a projects table so we can have the list of projects, and then we need to have a third table which is a combination of both of these two tables, the employees and the project tables, which are going to have some attributes so then we can edit the details. So for doing that, let's create here the employee table first. Let's create next the projects table, and let's create next the employee project table, which will contain the combination of both tables. Okay, so the project table, let's add an attribute called title into the projects, and the employees, let's add another attribute called name of the employee, and in the employee project let's just drag and drop the project table and the employee table inside of the employee project table so we can have the foreign keys. And let's make these two as primary keys, so we can remove this one here, and we can just click here and erase all these fields that doesn't really matter, which are default attributes that the system creates by default. And let's change the project ID and the employee ID, which are foreign keys, let's convert them to primary keys from another table. Okay. Additionally, in here we want to add other attributes, so we can add some nodes. We could add more attributes, so the idea is when we have our matrix, we're going to have a button that will open a pop-up to edit this specific attribute. So we could have other attributes here if you wanted to, with the details of specifically for that specific project related with that employee. This is just an example, so we just keep it simple with just one attribute. So let's just update, done. And voila, here it is, the correct table. So we can erase if we want this field too, so we can have this much more clean. Then, and we can erase these fields here. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our three tables much more clean. Let's just add some default records in here. So we can add 3 employees, 1, 2, and 3. So we can have 3 employees. Okay, done. We have 3 employees. In the projects, let's add new projects too. We can add a project alpha, and we can add a project beta. So 2 projects. And in here in the employee projects, what we want, let's add some default data. Project alpha for the employee UL. We leave the nodes empty, and we can do the project beta to Maria. This is just an example. Here it is. This is just an example. Okay, so what we want to do next is let's go back to our matrix page and we want to show in our matrix, let's show the borders so we can see this better, and in the axis Y we want to show the employees list, and in the axis X we want to show the projects list, and then in the middle we want to show the correspondence records from this table, the employee project, which is the combination of the two tables, the employee and the project table. Okay, first of all, let's select the add row. So let's go here to the layers. Let's increase this so we can see this better and work this better. Okay, so let's select the table row inside of the ads, the table ads, and let's click load resource. And in here let's choose the load resource from the project table. Get multiple records list, okay. So the system creates all the logic code to get all the items, all the records from the project and show them here. Now then let's select the column, this column here, and let's tell the system I want it to show in here the attributes title. And then let's select the row of the body, this row here, and let's do the loads resource for the employee to get multiple records lists. And then it's done, and then let's select this column here and let's show the correspondence attribute, which will be the name. Okay, perfect. Let me check something here. Okay, employees, this is correct. Okay, project, this is correct. Now let's select the matrix widgets and let's do load resource to, where in here I want to have the employee projects. And let's do update. Okay. Now there is something missing, which is in here we need to select the primary keys. So we select in the matrix widgets, we need to select the primary keys for the employee projects, which are these two attributes here. So we need to scroll down, and in here we need to add that two primary keys, which will be the employee ID and will be the project ID. Okay, and we need to do the same thing for the add the role and the role for inside of the body that we load resources to. So in here we need to set the primary key, which in this case will be the project ID, and for this one, so for this table row in here, is the primary key, it's the employee ID. Okay, so if we save this and if we preview, let's see what we currently have until now. Okay, so we have the employees, we have the projects, and we have the item column, which this the idea now is to fetch these the data from this table here, which is currently already doing. So if you want to be sure, just go here to the matrix widgets and go here to the properties and change this to only show data if exists. And if you save, it will only show two records, which are the records that we created in here in this table. So as you can see here, we have only these two records. Okay, so next step what we want to do is to enable or disable, so create a switch box here so we can enable the projects in each employee. Okay, so what we want to do next is in here, so we could use the bootstrap checkbox switch. We could use something like these switches here, which are nice. So we can just copy these or we can just replicate this here. So in here what I want is to have a div inside, and that div we're gonna have these two classes. And then inside of here I want to have a checkbox inside, and that checkbox needs to have this class here from check input. Okay, done. Okay, something like that. Okay. Of course, then we could set some margins here, so this doesn't need to be too much to the left, whatever, but we won't do that now. So what we want to do is just to be focused on the functionality. Okay, so we have this checkbox here. What we want to do is to display this checkbox. It will display, it could be simply the employee ID, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and we want in here, now we want to show all data. Okay, let's save, let's refresh to see what we have now, and voila. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we can see that we only have the checkbox selects for the records that exist. The records that don't exist, they are unselected. So now we want to trigger every time that I select that I change these values here. I want to enable something in the to insert the record or to delete the record into the database. So basically, if I go here, if I do manage records, if I press the control key, it will open a new tab here and I can see the records. So what I want to do is, if I disable this record, I want this to be deleted. If I want to enable, I want this to be added a new record. So we have previous tutorials where we done that before, so let's just do that very quickly. So we need to drag a form into here, drag this widget inside of the form, and here we can add some padding, start 2, could be 3, whatever, and in here maybe we can put some margin, whatever. Okay, now what we want to do is when we change this input, we want to trigger an event inside the form to save or to delete that specific record in the database. So how do I do that? So we go to the event section below here, the event section. In the on change, I want to select this option here, which is update resource item attribute on change. Basically, every time that I click on that input field in that checkbox, basically it will trigger this event here, which basically it will execute the update attribute resource that is defined inside of the form. So we need to go to the form, so we didn't define that resource yet, so we need to go here to the dynamic widget, to the resources, and in here we need to go to the update attribute resource and to select, to create in this case a new resource in the employee project table, which will be the insert or delete a record attribute. So we just do update and it's done. So if we save and if we refresh, when I add here a new record and if I refresh, I can see that I have a new record here. If I disable the record, it's giving an error because we are putting here the employee ID. So okay, so there is one step missing, which is, so this field here, we need to add a dummy name here. The name, we forgot to add the name, so we just add a dummy name. Doesn't really matter, we can really put dummy name. Why is that? Let me explain you what currently the system is doing. So the system, if you do the inspect, if you go to our debug tab in here, if you go to the network tab, when you click in here, when you activate something, what the system is doing is sending these two primary keys, which are correct, but the thing is that because we are showing in here, we said the display resource attribute, we put here employee ID, basically in here is showing, is replacing the employee ID with the corresponding value of that checkbox. So what I want to do, we just need to pass here some dummy name. So that's why we put here the name of the input, we put here some name that doesn't really matter. So now if I refresh, when I enable or disable, I can see that this doesn't change the values, and these just show the correspondent attributes, the dummy name. So if I enable, it shows me true. If I disable, it shows me empty. And this makes automatically the system to insert or to remove the record into the database, as we are seeing here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so first step is done. So we had previous tutorials explaining you how can you do that. Exactly what we did until now. We have previous tutorials that explain this a little bit better. Okay, so next step, what we want to do is to create here a button. When this is active, we want to create a button to open a pop-up to edit the details, which will be in this case the notes of each employee project. So how can we do that? So let's go back to our page editor. Let's drag a button into here. Let's drag here a button. We can just simply erase this. Okay, let's add some classes here in this button so we can have this more beautiful, something like this. Okay, now it's more beautiful. Let's put here open details or edit details, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and what we want to do next is go to this button here, go here to the properties, and what we want to select is a button here, which will be body buttons, will be button to open editable pop-up with item details. Okay, which will be open edit pop-up ID, don't click, and the pop-up ID will put an ID that now will create a new pop-up. We didn't create yet the pop-up, but we'll create a pop-up which will have this ID. Edit, let's put edit employee project details, something like that. Okay, something like that. Okay, this will be probably the ID that we're gonna give. Okay, so now let's add here a new pop-up, which is in Bootstrap. It's the model. We are using Bootstrap, but you don't really need to use Bootstrap. If you want, you can use other library. We just use Bootstrap because we like Bootstrap, but you don't really need to use it. So let's delete this button that comes by default, that doesn't really matter. Okay, and let me check something here. Okay, this is done. Okay, so let's select the pop-up, the main div pop-up, and let's add an ID, which was the ID that we gave before, which is the edit employee project details. Okay, perfect. So if we save this, let me just show you what we currently have until now. So if I click open details, currently is not doing anything. Okay, is refreshing the page. Okay, that's because this button here, it's the type of button, and when we click in this button, let's just collapse all these sections here. In here, what we need to do, we need to return false. In here, wait, return false. Okay, now it's working fine. Okay, I can see that I click and it's opening the pop-up. Okay, so what I want to do next is, when in the pop-up, I need to have a form here, so when I open the pop-up, it will load the correspondence data from the specific record that I selected here in the matrix. So first thing to do is, let's copy a form. Wait, not here. Here. And let's move all these fields inside. Okay, okay. And now what I want to do is I want to give an ID to this form, which could be details, we can just add form here. And every time basically that I open the pop-up, I want to create a dependency so we can load the form too. So here it is, okay. And in the form now, I want to load a resource, which basically it is to get a specific record for the employee projects. Okay, the record it is created. I don't want this to be, I want this to be none, because this form, this resource that we set here, it will only be triggered when the user opens the pop-up through the dependency. Okay, and now in here, in the form, I want to add in here all the elements so we can show the details of the correspondent project, the correspondent employee project data. So to do that, I just scroll down. In this form, I select here form, so I can have here other options. And additionally, in the form, before I add the attributes here to show, what I want to do is in here in the form, in the pop-up, I want to select the type. I want to select this as a pop-up, and as an editable pop-up. Okay, so now when I go back to the form, when I go back here to the attributes to show, I can add new attributes, which will be, in this case, I can add the project ID. Ignore this message, doesn't really matter. I can add the employee ID, and I can add the notes. Okay, basically the system already creates all of this for me, so I just need to copy these elements inside of this div. Okay, perfect. Where in here we want to convert this not to a text box but to a spam, or we can put it read-only, doesn't really matter, but let's just convert it to spam. Convert it to spam. In here let's convert it to a span too. Okay, and this guy, let's convert this to a text area. Okay, perfect. Okay, can just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and we can change the title here saying edit details. Okay, first part is done. Let's just save and let's preview what we currently have. So when I click here details, I can see that appears 1-1. If I select this one, appears 2-2, which is correct. If I click here, I'll give an error because there are no records in the database. Okay, which is correct. Okay, so next step, what we want to do is when I click in this save button, I want to trigger the update resource in the form. So if I select the form, I need to create an update resource. In here, in the update resource, I need to create a new resource so we can save the new records inside of the employee projects, which will be this one here, update the record. So I just click update, so the system can create all the logic code to make this possible. And then in this button here, I need to go to the on-click event and I need to select it, this event here, update resource item. Basically this resource item, what we want to do is it will trigger the update resource defined in the form, which was the resource that we created. So it will trigger the update resource defined in the form. So we have the form selected and we have this resource here created. Okay, so if we save this and if we refresh, if we put something here and if we click save, it's still not working because I think we forgot to add the primary keys. So we need to go back here to the form and we need to set the primary keys for that specific form, which are the project ID and the employee ID. So now if I save and I refresh the page, If I save, it's saving, it's not giving any message, but it's saving, as you are seeing here. So we can put here in the update resource of the form, we can add a message saying saved, something like that, saved, and in here we can put error message, whatever. Okay, additionally, when we save the form, maybe we want to close the pop-up, so maybe we can go here and click close parent pop-up, something like that. We save, we refresh, and when we click here, if we save, it says save. So we come here, we write something, we click save, it saved, and it closed the pop-up. When I check again, I can see that it's still here, the changes that I did, so it is working correctly, as you are seeing. Okay, now, what I want to do next is, I just want to show these buttons when this input is checked. Otherwise, if it's not checked, if I click here, I'll get an error because this record doesn't exist in the database, and that's ugly, so I don't want that. So I just want to show this switch box for if it is disabled. If it is enabled, I want to show the switch and the button. So how can I do that? Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is to go back to our widget group, and in here, what we want to do is when we set the value here, so when we are in the display resource attribute, if we expand advanced properties, in here we have a completely display callback. So in here we want to create a JavaScript function that basically will check if it is enable or disable, and according with that status it will show or hide this button. So let's create here a new function called toggle open details button, something like that. Okay, and now let's create that JavaScript function. So let's scroll down, let's go to our script widget, and we can just put it somewhere. You can just put it here. Okay, and in here let's create our JavaScript function with this name. What's the name that we gave? So this function receives as the first argument the element itself, so which will be, in this case, will be this checkbox. And what we want to do here is, from this checkbox we want to get this button, and then check according with the status, hide or show this button. So let's get first the button. So let's put here elements, we can do parent node dot closes, and what we want to do, we want to get the form, and from the form we want to get query selector, we want to get the button. Okay, and now we want to hide or show these elements according with the status of that checkbox. So we have if the element, if the checkbox, if it is checked, we want the display to be empty. By default is blocked. Otherwise, we want the display to be none. Something like this. And what we want to do next is, additionally, when I click in the button, so when I click in this button here on change, I want to execute in here, I want to execute this function too. But I want this to be this function before the return false. Okay, perfect. Okay. Additionally, okay, let's just save and show you what we have. There is a step missing. Okay, currently, let me show you. If I disable this, it hides. If I enable, it shows. It is correct. And if when it displays, it is showing the button, so it is correct. But when the problem is that I can still see these buttons here, that's because I need to put, by default, these buttons needs to be hidden. That's why. So I need to select the buttons here, and I need to go to my settings in here, the general, and I need to put the display to none. So I need to hide basically this button by default. Don't worry, the button disappears from here, but you can always access the button through here. So if you click like in here, you can see that you have here still the button. So don't worry about it. Okay, so if you save and if you refresh the page, now you can see that for when the display is active, it shows the button, so I can click it and I can edit my details, or I can see other details. As you can see, it's working. So why remember that this adds something here, but now is not showing anything. That's because we don't have that in the database. Why is that? Because when I remove this, before I did that action before, what happened is that the system delete the record. That's what we wanted. When I enable, the system create a new record, but creates a new record without notes. That's why now it appears without anything. So if you want to have something, we need to save. So as you can see, this is working perfectly. Okay, when I enable, I can see the button. When I disable, it hides the button. When I enable, it shows the button. Now I can put something here. The notes saved successfully. So I can see this one, I can see this one, and I can see this one. If I refresh here, I have here all the correspondence records in the database. If I disable this guy, it will erase, in this case it will be erase this one, this record here, as you can see. Okay, this is just an example how can you create a matrix, very simple matrix, where you can add buttons, where that buttons will open pop-up, so you can edit the details of that third table that basically combines two other tables, which in this case combine the table, the project table, with the employee table. And we have that third table that combines these relationships between these two tables. That's the table that we are seeing here, which is the employee project table. And that's it. So thank you very much.